We're going to do something a little bit different today. But before that, first things first, we're going to make a coffee. So it's currently July 2025, but let's rewind to October 2022. I just arrived in Dubai, and this was where I was at a crossroads with my health and fitness journey. I walked in Banous, famous gym in Dubai where some of the best bodybuilders, some of the best Olympians in the world train. And I had an itch that I needed to scratch, and that was to compete again. But I had no ambitions to compete naturally. I had ambitions to turn pro. And I knew genetically I needed to take the jump and to go assisted. What I'm going to talk about today is how that journey actually went for me. It was a journey that spanned just shy of 18 months. And it was an incredible journey where I learned a lot about myself. I built incredible levels of discipline, but I took huge risks to get to the position that I was in from a competitive bodybuilding standpoint. So January 2023 is when it all started. My first injection and my first course of anabolic steroids. Now people may think, what was it? What did you take? In short and complete transparency, it was just testosterone, and it was dosed at TRT. Now everybody's definition of TRT is different. In my case, it was 150 milligram. And the reason for this is because when I got my bloods done, I was already in the high ranges. So naturally, I was already placed at around 26 nanomole. So for me, that's a risk because I was functioning at the higher end. For most people, that's a decision that you will need to take based on your hormones and where you're placed at. So the reason we opted for 150 milligram of testosterone is because I was on the higher end of the natural ranges. So the goal was just to move me 10 to 15 nanomole higher into a physiological range. This then leaves more wiggle room to move me up in terms of dosages, as well as moving me into a super physiological range. I was able to stay on 150 milligram of testosterone for 11 weeks. And in that time frame, I went from weighing 78 kilogram upwards to 85 kg without really pushing food, without really gaining too much body fat. So the progress that I made was incredible. So although I'd already gained almost 10% of my original body weight, in order for me to be competitive in the NPC division, chasing an IFBB Pro card, I needed to continue to push. So the goal was 90 kg. My weight had become a little bit stagnant, so what we did is we increased the PD dosage to 200 milligram of testosterone per week. It's important to note there was nothing else at all being used at this point. In total, I spent 6 months progressively pushing. Because I was only utilizing 150 milligram, which is a cruise, as people would define it, I was able to blast on 200 for a further 12 weeks. In that time frame, my physique went from this to this. As you can see, that's a proper off season. That's 78 kg upwards to just shy of around 91 to 92 in my first initial push-up phase. So how did I find this affected me both physically and mentally? I was the strongest that I'd ever been. I could recover from a ridiculous amount of volume. I was continuously applying progressive overload, and generally I'd added a lot of muscle mass. Felt amazing in the gym. However, the negatives, I felt shocking out of the gym. My confidence had dropped significantly from wearing normal outfits, going out for dinner, lunch. I was now perceived as a bodybuilder, whereas previously I was just a normal person in a gym, outside of the gym. Everywhere I went in public now, how much do you bench? How much do you lift? And that really did start to pull on me a little bit because I'd always been perceived as somebody who was in incredible shape all year round and looked fit, looked healthy, versus now operating at 91, 92 kilogram, pretty much a block. However, did I notice that the PEDs changed me in any way, shape or form at this point in terms of personality, anger, mood? Not at all. I didn't really notice any change other than the positives with regards to training and the negatives in terms of just how I felt day to day in terms of self-confidence. But that really was just a start. That was the first push-up done. And now we went into a preparation for my first competitive bodybuilding show as an assisted athlete in the NPC pursuing an IFBB Pro card. We went from peak off season 92 all the way down to what was pretty much 80 kilogram on stage for the first regional, where I won my first class and I came second in the overall. So I knew here the risk that I took was almost worth it. It was like, right, okay, I've tested the waters, I've competed at the highest amateur standard, and I'm in the mix. What I realized across this phase here was more PEDs were getting involved, in particular orals, in particular fat burners, and generally going through that prep setting of being hungry, noticing that they affect my mood at certain points when I was taking them. It all became a little bit more real in terms of what I was doing to not just my body, but also my mental health. However, 2 weeks after the first initial regional, I went into my first pro qualifier in Milan with absolutely zero expectations. This was in October. My bodybuilding journey started in January, where I was told I probably wouldn't even place in a standard regional show, let alone a pro qualifier. There was 25 athletes in my class, and I finished third. So now when I got off stage, I felt right. I'm in the mix here, and this goal of pursuing an IFBB pro card is not just a dream, but it's actually in touching distance after just 10 months on the amateur circuit. And please may I add, very little use of PEDs in comparison to the people who beat me and in comparison to the people who I'd already beaten. So the vision just got stretched and the journey was just beginning. Now this is probably a point that every competitive bodybuilder who's taken PEDs at some point can relate to. After getting off stage in Milan, I was on such a high. I realized that I'd found something that I wasn't just good at, I had incredible potential to go further. So for me, I entered this journey with a real risk to reward ratio understanding. I was only ever going to take minimal amounts in order to get the maximum back. However, all of a sudden, that mentality switched. And I was like, I will do whatever I need to do to get to where I need to get to chase and pursue the IFBB Pro card. And I think a lot of bodybuilders find themselves in this circle continuously, chasing a goal. And everything around you then just becomes noise. All you do is wake up and you think about being a pro. You act like a pro. And I went from being just a normal average bodybuilder to somebody after Milan who was a man possessed on a complete mission to just achieve greatness. Now it's important to know after Milan, I ran a very extensive health phase. I pulled everything out completely and went on to TRT. When I say everything, I want full transparency on this channel. I was using testosterone and I was using a DHT, right? So primobolan or mastron. I was also using fat burners, also known as lipolytics, in the form of clenbuterol, and just generally some orals, Anavar. So that was pretty much all I used in that first setting. Dosages aren't really relevant, but when I say they was very, very conservative, I say that with full transparency. And the look that I achieved in the result, I think anybody who knows anything around bodybuilding and new exposure to anabolics will 100% believe that. So the health phase spanned 12 weeks, pretty much from October through to November and December. And then we entered what was January 2024. Here, I went into another off-season. This off-season spanned only 12 weeks. It was an in and out off-season. We built a significant amount of muscle tissue. And again, from October all the way through to the end of March, I went from weighing 80 kilogram on stage and I added 20 kilogram. Peak off-season, I was sat at 100. And as you can see, I ate a lot of food and I was willing to do what it needed to be done from a PED standpoint to come back down in this next preparation setting and be in the mix for a pro card. Now, as you can see, visually I changed a lot. I went from having a physique that most 18 to 30-year-olds desired to being a big bodybuilder, to just having a physique that most bodybuilders would want. And along with that, I had a neck that was double the size. My face had completely changed. I was carrying an extra 22 kilogram on my frame from the starting position to the end of the second off season. And from that feeling in Milan of just ultimate obsession and wanting to become a pro to that feeling at the end of the off season, I couldn't believe the change. It was almost like I'd lost my identity. I had no real purpose other than to be a pro. I had no social life in Dubai. I wasn't really communicating or spending time with friends or doing anything outside of bodybuilding. And I looked and I reviewed before going into that prep. And that prep meant everything to me. And I'd lost almost everything around me other than the journey to become pro. And that for me hit home. And when I entered that second prep, I already knew it would be my final prep ever as a bodybuilder. But not just as a bodybuilder, as an assisted bodybuilder. So before the second prep began, I lined up as many shows as possible to aim to land the IFBB Pro card. I had an incredible run. I finished second in Alicante at Amateur Olympia, the biggest amateur show pretty much in the world. I won the M Pro Classic, which is probably the second biggest show, and narrowly missed out on a pro card in the overall. And then I went to Ireland, I won my class, and I lost in the overall again. My audience, people on YouTube, people on Instagram, was all spurring me to keep going. But really after the first show in Spain, I knew it wasn't for me. I was watching athletes become so emotional to the result and so excited to get back into another prep for the next show. Before bodybuilding, I had a thriving transformation business. And during bodybuilding, I would wake up with no energy, with no drive, and just think, I can't wait for today to be done, because I had low food, high cardio, and I was running a lot of lipolytics and PEDs in order to achieve the goal. So I left no stone unturned. I gave it my absolute all. I took risks that I needed to take. And it was now time, officially a year ago to this day, where I needed to transition to being fully back natural. So when I actually started my transition from coming off PEDs to being back natural, this is when I realized actually, one, how hard it was going to be, but two, the actual side effects of taking anabolic steroids. Cheers, mate. So let's talk some stats and let's talk some facts. When I came off, I got my bloods done 9 weeks after coming off, and I went cold turkey. I didn't use any PCT because I wanted to naturally restore to begin with, if that was possible. My first readings of testosterone back was 6 nanomole. So that is literally bottom of the barrel. Felt like shit, had no desire to go to the gym, and my physique was disappearing right in front of my face. So for me, motivation to train had completely diminished. Motivation to lift weights had completely diminished. So being at 6 nanomole 9 weeks post-cycle and last injection, I needed to do something about it. And arguably, I could have done that before to prevent feeling so shit for so long. But I wanted to try and see if I could recover naturally. And the truth be told, I wasn't really recovering. Of course, given a few more months, I may have. But what I used, and this is interesting for a lot of people who do want to come off cycle, typically, I still have some to this day, just in case. I used here what is HCG, and I also used what is here pretty much HMG. So these two here are more in line with your fertility as well as your FH and your LSH. So when you inject anabolics, both of these hormones shut completely down, okay? In order to get them back, you can use HMG, HCG, which will generally, in short, bring your balls back to life, get you back fertile. Now, in order to get my testosterone and my hormones back into a good range, and this is a PCT supplement that you need to tread carefully with and be aware that this will make you feel like shit, I used what is Clomid. And as you can see, I still have some left to this day. And I use this dosed and prescribed accordingly to me. So the full PCT cycle actually lasted what was 4 months. And the reason for this is because I didn't just want to restore my testosterone levels, I wanted to get my fertility back, and I wanted to be optimized fully. So after that period, I went from 6 nanomolar testosterone up to 22 nanomolar testosterone, and every single health marker from my liver, from my blood count, was back in range as a functioning human, as someone who's very fit and healthy. So although those supplements post-cycle may cost quite a lot and they're hard to get prescribed, they are worth every single penny. But this is what you need to remember. A lot of people are willing to take the PEDs, but they're not willing to do the blood work frequently, and they're not willing to do their post-cycle therapy properly if they come off. And this is where the harm can be done. People have asked me over the last 12 months, how do you look so young again? How do you look so fresh? How are you getting up at 5 a.m. for your alarms? How are you still weight training? How have you kept your physique and your shape? The truth is, I still train hard. I eat perfectly well, but I did my post-cycle therapy perfectly. I manned it. So many people will come off anabolics and after 4 or 5 weeks they'll shit themselves and they'll get the injections back out and they'll go back on. If you really want to come off, you want to make sure you've got a good structure in place still with your training. You're doing consistent cardio, you're eating good food, you're aware that you're going to feel shit and you're going to be taking some supplements that are going to make you feel shit. But time is a healer. And if you do it properly, you will be in a good position and you will make a full recovery. Now, it's important to note my total usage of anabolics wasn't that much, and it was spanned over 18 months. So it was reversible. Now, that's exactly what I did to essentially restore my levels and my hormones, but this is exactly how I felt when doing this. So it was around September 2024 when I officially started my proper in-depth PCT protocol. This was probably the hardest 3 to 4 months of the whole journey because I was getting softer from a condition perspective. I was losing all the muscle, which to be honest for me was amazing. My neck was getting thinner, the inflammation from my face was dropping off, I was looking younger. I did suffer from really bad acne across all of my back and all of my face because my hormones were just completely baselined and then all of a sudden it was coming back up and my body didn't really know what was happening. And from a motivation standpoint, I'm not going to lie, everybody who knows me, super motivated, super inspired. I was struggling getting out of bed. Training and weight training was just the worst thing in the world. I wasn't really fit at this point, and I'll never forget, I went to the gym to train pull and I ran a 10K. The furthest I'd ever ran before that day was probably around 3. I think my average heart rate was around 170 beats per minute for the full duration of that 10K. I had blisters on my feet for weeks after it. I just wasn't built to run a 10K, but I would rather do that than lift weights. That's the extremes of how I was feeling. But each day it got easier. The acne started to clear up. My thoughts and my feelings started to become a lot more clear. But most importantly, the one thing that I suffered with the most, and everybody close to me knew this, was my self-confidence. I was starting to see the older version of me. I could wear nice clothes again. I started to enjoy and see what I looked like in the mirror. And this was a big element of one reason why I transitioned out of bodybuilding, because I lost my whole self-confidence. And slowly but surely, that started to come back across October, November, December, January. However, I still don't look at weights the same. I still don't go into the gym. I don't look at the barbell with the same level of aggression. And that's why, to this day now, I love my running. I love my conditioning. I will always keep my weights as a staple, but because I have no desire to step on stage or actually develop my physique, I'm just very happy with how I look. Yeah, I may do a photo shoot in the near future, and I may push extremes with physique development, but I'm never going to go into a big off season. My goals now are more performance-based because I learned so much around myself in terms of pushing the extremities of bodybuilding as an assisted athlete. So 12 months on, in July 2025, I feel finally I'm back to my normal self. I'm confident again. I love how I look. Of this current period now, I'm the fittest that I've ever been. My heart rate when I was a bodybuilder was 73 beats per minute. It's now 43 beats per minute. I actually prefer how I look naturally. So I learned a lot by going assisted. Do I regret it? No. I became a better coach, a better bodybuilder. I learned new levels of discipline. So if you're watching this video and you're weighing it up, are PEDs for me? Do I need to take them? If you absolutely love bodybuilding, if you want to turn pro and you want to be relentless and that's what you want to do day in, day out, then that's a conversation you need to have with yourself and follow the correct protocols. And it's not a quick conversation. It's what you need to do and sit down with the people close to you, who you love and who love you, because it's a huge decision. I have nothing against it. And I learned a lot, as I've said. However, for me, I'm much happier naturally, being in control of my hormones, liking how I look, and not having what I define as a roller coaster of emotions because you're pushing extremes. It's for a certain level of person, and I respect it so much. But for me, I'm better off without it. And I just wanted to put today's video together to talk through my experiences. Everybody's different, and for you it may be the best thing ever. But for me, I learned a lot, but I'm glad that I can sit here 12 months after the journey, be back to my best self, be fit, be healthy, and be able to share my journey with you guys.